This is Peter J. Redding at SignatureSeriesPens.com, returning exotic woods to and reminding you of your innate brilliance. Alright, so welcome to the continuation of the grand experiment. All the segments have dried now. I've given them a day or so to kind of relax and rest. The decals, each one of them all the way through have stayed intact. I mean, the decal, if I were to not have to touch this ever again, basically all the different ways that all the different woods, all the two different CA finishes worked. So now we're going to go into overcoats, and we start with the lacquer, and it's a high gloss. And just some craft brushes, nothing special. I think these were, I don't know, $3 or $4, I guess, for the set of 4 or 5 of them. Said it worked with acrylics and watercolors and oils and everything else, so I'm just using that. Sprayed some of the finish onto a post-it note so I could do it in my workshop and not have to evacuate everybody. And just painting that on with one of the brushes, just a thin layer. The next one is polyurethane, again a clear gloss, and I apply that to 2 of the segments on the far left. Again, just spraying it on a post-it note there. I've cleaned my brush of previous lacquer, and just again putting a light coat on top of the decal on that's been placed onto, in that case, the purple heart, and now the teak. So I fast forward this grand experiment with all the various finishes that I've used. I decided to sand a couple of them before finishing them with the poly and the lacquer, thinking that maybe if I roughed up the outside of the decal that it would adhere to it and be a better bond. So that's what that P2000 represents on the back label. This is fast forwarded now to the next day, where I just everything is nice and dry, and I just want to do a light sanding of whatever finish is on top, just to clear off any ridges or bumps or bubbles. Again, at this stage, every single wood, every single type of finish, whether it was the poly, which was a water-based product, or the lacquer, all the decals are 100% intact. So I sand them all down, and now I'm looking at putting on another top coat of In this case, polyurethane, the water-based clear gloss. That's what it looks like. And applying that to a couple of the samples that I've been testing here. Again, the main thing that I'm looking at now in this stage of it is all the decals themselves have been kept intact. Remember we had a mylar that we did not take off of the original decal, so that's still within the, bonding it to the sample, eventually the pen blank. And so now what I'm looking at is not so much the degradation of the decal, but is it a permanent, is it a solution that I could use on a pen and know that it's going to last for years or even decades with banging and abuse and rubbing it and utilizing that pen every day. And so that's why I'm trying different materials out here as the overcoat finish with each of these things. I'm also keeping an eye on, here we go into the clear lacquer gloss. Out of the 3 different finishes that I'm trying on as the overcoat or overfinish to the decals, this is the most toxic. This was just almost overbearing. So I had ventilation going. It's almost like I'm secretly hoping that this one doesn't work real well or the best, so that I can get rid of it, because it was the worst of the 3. So I apply this finish to the 2 on the right. The one that I have in my hand there is bubinga. It's an African wood. It's sometimes referred to as the African rosewood. Not really in the Delbergia family, but nevertheless a pretty red wood. And this is the brown heart. Again, just a real thin, what would hopefully be the final finish on the wood. I'm now moving into the shellac, and I chose the clear or the transparent as opposed to the amber, the more natural shellac, because I like to have my woods show off their own natural colors as opposed to any other artificial coloring. Give it a good stir. That's what shellac looks like when you've stirred it well. All the particles are evenly distributed, not just settling in on the bottom. And I use this for 2 of the other segments here. This one is the marble wood. Again, just a real thin coat, which would be simulating a top coat or a final finish on a pen blank. And at this stage, it's looking very promising. All of these are looking quite spectacular, actually. And remember, the wood that I started with were just shop scraps. These are right off of my table saw. There's been no sanding, no fine finishing with micro mesh or any of that. I just took scraps that I had and put on the initial Pens Plus, which is a walnut oil based friction polish, So I'm not working with the best base to begin with, but again, as an experiment, I just want to test all the different types of varieties or combinations of finishes. So we fast forward about 2 days, and now I'm looking at the final test. Do these stay on? And I'm beginning to cry here. It's like, no! That one came off so easy. But the good news is that was the lacquers, so I wasn't that disappointed. But the two that I had the lacquer on just came straight off. Now these were initially put on with CA, with a CA finish. I'm just really trying to gouge it here, and I'm working at this decal and finally get the corner to come peeling off of it. And this is on a probably the roughest of the woods from the beginning finish. Here again, I really just try to lay into this with my fingernail, trying to scrape it off with probably twice the effort of those first two that came off very easily. And this is putting up more of a fight. This one was with a CA to begin with, and then a shellac on top of that. And like I say, I'm just really gouging away at this one now again to give it a good workout. I was able to take out some of the middle part of this particular decal, but looking at the fine edges, the circle around it, the other parts of it was very hard and what I would call permanent. This was again with a CA. This one was with the Harbor Freight CA. Remember I said it was a little more viscous, and it went on a little bit thicker because it was not brushed on initially. This one was with that just with the end of the CA tube itself. I'm able to scrape off just a little bit of the top coat there, but none of the decal. So the finish that I had up on top was, and all the rest of them basically scraped off, so I fast forwarded it here. I put on 2 more top coats of the Scotch CA with a brush, and then kind of take a 3600 micro mesh to bring it down to a kind of a satin finish. And these were the 2 clear winners of this whole experiment, using a CA and using the brush. I think really helped to kind of even it out. So I would leave it as is for a glossy, and I would take a 3600 micro mesh to bring it back down to a satin finish, both which what I would consider at this stage a permanent finish. So there you have it. This is Peter J. Redding at SignatureSeriesPens.com, returning exotic woods to and reminding you of your innate brilliance.